Alex Ferguson, they put you through the mill into injury time, almost lost the cup, and you win it. The new European champions, the treble, the dream come true for you.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Football, bloody hell.
In 1999, Manchester United pulled off the impossible. They conquered England, then Europe. And in just 11 days, they secured the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League.
It's gone right to the final whistle on the final day of the league season, and Manchester United are the pick of the Premiership once again.
2 down, 1 to go. FA Cup winners for the 3rd time in 6 years, the second of their 3 steps to heaven. That have done so much in Manchester United's cause in the last 8 years will now wrap themselves around the handles of the giant trophy which says Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
A treble, a triumph no English club had ever achieved. You remember the goals, the glory, the night in Barcelona. But what happened after the confetti settled and the cameras stopped rolling? Some became managers, others vanished into obscurity. And a few ended up in courtrooms, tabloids, and scandals that no one saw coming. This is the story of Manchester United's most unforgettable team, where they rose, how they fell, and what became of the heroes of '99. Ryan Giggs.
I've been here since I was 12, 13. It's been great for me. I'm right from the start because I was a United fan.
For over 2 decades, Ryan Giggs was Manchester United's eternal flame. The winger who glided past defenders like wind through grass, the teenager who debuted under Ferguson in the early 90s and never let go of his place. In 1999, he was already a veteran, and his semi-final goal against Arsenal, shirt off, chest heaving, became a defining image of United's treble run. By the end of his career, Giggs held more trophies than any player in English football history. 13 Premier League titles, 2 Champions Leagues, and over 960 appearances in red. But that wasn't the full story. While fans saw a loyal servant on the pitch, behind closed doors, his personal life would later unravel into headlines no one expected. In 2011, a media storm erupted. Giggs had obtained a super injunction to prevent the press from reporting on an affair with model Imogen Thomas. But what followed was even more damaging, a revelation that he had been involved in a secret 8-year affair with his brother's wife.
We had a fallout, and there was messages on her phone, and that's when I had the instinct that it was Ryan.
Ryan Giggs accepts he's known around the world for 2 things: his abilities as a footballer and his inability to remain faithful to his partners.
The public image of Giggs, once pristine, was shattered. Then came legal battles. In 2022, he stood trial for charges of assault and coercive behaviour against a former partner.
The court has adjourned on the opening day of the Ryan Giggs trial. The Manchester United legend is accused of attacking and controlling his ex-girlfriend and assaulting her sister.
On the first day of the second week of his trial for domestic abuse, Ryan Giggs heard the version of events of the only other person in the house with him and his then-girlfriend on the night he's alleged to have assaulted them both.
Though the jury failed to reach a verdict and a retrial was later dropped, the damage to his reputation lingered. Brands distanced themselves. His role as Wales manager ended, and one of football's most admired figures became one of its most complicated. Today, Giggs lives in a quieter kind of spotlight. No longer the face of Manchester United, but still a reminder of an era defined by glory and haunted by scandal. For many, his legacy now lives in 2 halves: the player who lit up Old Trafford and the man who couldn't outrun his own decisions, David Beckham. In 1999, David Beckham wasn't just a footballer, he was the face of a global movement. The boy from East London with a right foot like a sniper rifle had become Manchester United's most bankable star. That treble season, he was everywhere, on the pitch, on billboards, and on front pages. His corner kicks in the Champions League final delivered 2 goals in 3 minutes. But Beckham didn't just assist victory. He styled it, packaged it, and sold it to the world. Then came the backlash. While Beckham's fame skyrocketed after marrying Victoria Posh Spice Adams, not everyone at Old Trafford approved. Sir Alex Ferguson famously warned him, "The minute you become bigger than the manager, you're gone." Their relationship began to sour. In 2003, a dressing room argument turned infamous. Ferguson kicked a boot across the locker room. It struck Beckham above the eye.
He started to walk over to me and he kicked a pile of clothes on the floor and out came this boot and it hit me.
That was an incident which was a freakish. If I tried it 100 times or 1,000,000 times, it could not happen again.
The tabloids loved it. A stitched-up eyebrow. A broken relationship. Beckham was sold to Real Madrid just months later. Even before that, the controversies had begun piling up. The red card at the 1998 World Cup made him a national villain.
2 days before I was a hero, and the next day they wanted me hung up.
With the sending off, I think what led after for the next few years, I think for me personally, that was the most difficult time for me in my career.
Effigies were burned. Papers branded him a traitor. Only a few years later, he became England captain, then was heavily criticised when his performances dipped, especially during the 2006 World Cup campaign. In Madrid, his marriage came under the microscope. Rumours of infidelity swirled, denied but persistent. Every new endorsement deal was matched with media speculation, every goal shadowed by gossip. After stints in LA, Milan and Paris, Beckham eventually left football with more fame than almost any player in history, but also more scrutiny. He reinvented himself as a businessman, a philanthropist, and an owner of Inter Miami. But even in recent years, his ties to Qatar during the 2022 World Cup attracted fresh criticism for prioritising image over human rights concerns. David Beckham redefined what it meant to be a modern athlete. But he also showed what happens when football stardom collides with celebrity culture and the fallout that often follows. Roy Keane.
Is that something that worked well with you, the fact that he did possess the same need to win as you did?
Well, I often say this, that I could see myself in Roy, and I was very comfortable with that.
If Manchester United's treble was a symphony, Roy Keane was the thunder behind it. Fierce, driven, and utterly uncompromising, Keane was the captain who demanded nothing less than war on the pitch, and loyalty off it. His performance against Juventus in the Champions League semi-final is still spoken about in reverent tones. Booked early, knowing he'd missed the final, he didn't back off. He played like a man possessed, dragging United to the greatest comeback of their season. But when the final arrived, he watched from the stands, the heart of the team, benched by his own sacrifice. But with Keane, greatness always came with fire, and fire, eventually, burns. His relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson, strong in the early years, began to fracture over time. The tipping point came in 2005. After a poor United performance, Keane filmed a brutal interview for the club's in-house TV station. He singled out teammates, called out their effort, their commitment, their character. The club never aired it, but Ferguson had seen enough. Keane was forced out.
For one reason or another, he decided to go and criticise his teammates. And so most of you have not seen that video, but you couldn't release it. We couldn't release it.
What did they want me to say? That the team played well? I said, listen, poor. The team was poor. But this idea that I was ranting and raving, again, the usual nonsense.
Even before that, controversy followed him. The most infamous came in 2001, when he launched a reckless, knee-high tackle on Alf-Inge Haaland. In his autobiography, Keane admitted it was intentional, revenge for a past insult. The FA hit him with a fine and a lengthy ban. Critics called it a disgrace. Keane called it honesty. After leaving United, he had spells at Celtic and then moved into management. He led Sunderland to Premier League promotion, but his confrontational style often wore thin. He fell out with players, with staff, with owners. As a pundit, Keane became a cult figure, brutally honest, endlessly quotable. But even on TV, the fire still flickered. Viewers loved the bluntness. Some wondered if he ever truly let football go. Today, Roy Keane is remembered as a warrior, a leader, and a powder keg. For all the trophies he lifted, it's the confrontations, on and off the pitch, that made him unforgettable. Paul Scholes. If Giggs was the flair and Keane the fire, Paul Scholes was the silence that screamed class. A midfielder who let his boots do the talking, Scholes was never flashy, never loud, but always one step ahead. In 1999, he was a crucial part of United's engine, quietly orchestrating play while others stole headlines. He missed the Champions League final through suspension, just like Keane, But his contribution leading up to that moment was massive. Vision, passing, goals from distance. Scholes was the kind of player who made the extraordinary look routine. But post-treble, something strange happened. Scholes never seemed to want the spotlight. No endorsements, no magazine covers, no tabloid scandals. At least, not until later. After retiring in 2011, he made headlines for doing what very few players ever have. He came back. United were struggling with midfield depth, and Scholes, then 36, unretired in secret. He showed up unannounced in the dressing room before an FA Cup tie. His teammates were as surprised as the fans. That comeback went better than anyone expected. He was still sharp, still vital. But when he retired again, the quiet persona faded just a bit. In the pundit's chair, Scholes became unexpectedly blunt. He criticised players, managers, even United itself, openly calling the team a mess during its post-Ferguson era. Fans admired the honesty. Some wondered if it masked frustration with the club that once defined him. Then came something nobody saw coming. In 2019, Scholes, long seen as the model professional, was fined £8,000 by the FA for breaching betting rules. He had placed 140 bets on football matches over a 4-year period, all while holding a stake in Salford City FC. For a player once admired for staying out of controversy, it felt jarring. Not a career-shattering scandal, but enough to dent the carefully curated image of quiet integrity. Scholes didn't deny it. He called it a genuine mistake, and the football world moved on. But the incident left behind a rare question mark. Then came something even stranger. In 2020, a video surfaced that had nothing to do with football and everything to do with viral absurdity. Scholes was filmed chewing his teenage daughter's toenails. No explanation, no context, just a 10-second clip that set the internet ablaze. The reactions were instant and brutal. Twitter melted down, memes flooded in. Sports sites that had rarely touched gossip headlines suddenly had Scholes trending for all the wrong reasons. He didn't respond publicly, but the clip became one of those bizarre pop culture moments, too weird to ignore, too cringe-worthy to forget. For fans, it added an awkward footnote to a legacy built on elegance and discipline. And for younger viewers, many who never saw Scholes in his prime, it became their first impression, proof that in the age of social media, even football royalty isn't immune to becoming a meme. Still, Paul Scholes remains one of United's most respected alumni. The controversies may be odd or minor, but they barely dent the legacy of a player that even Zidane once called the best midfielder of his generation. Peter Schmeichel. In 1999, Peter Schmeichel stood tall, literally and symbolically. The towering Dane was United's final line of defence and, in many ways, its first wave of attack. His booming throws and commanding presence were crucial during the treble season. And in the Champions League final, he wore the captain's armband. It was his last game for the club, and he went out as a European champion. But Schmeichel's exit was never part of a grand farewell. He had told Ferguson months before that his body couldn't handle the relentless demands of English football. Still, fans hoped he'd stay. He didn't. What came next surprised, and for some, stung. In 2002, after a spell in Portugal, Schmeichel returned to the Premier League, with Aston Villa. Strange, but forgivable. Then, in 2003, he joined Manchester City. For many United fans, that was crossing a line. Schmeichel insisted it was purely professional, no loyalty breached. But the Old Trafford faithful didn't all agree. Off the pitch, Schmeichel's second act was anything but quiet. He became a regular face in media, commentating, hosting, analysing. He even appeared on reality TV, including Strictly Come Dancing. His public persona was polished, diplomatic, intelligent, and occasionally critical of the modern game's excesses. But controversy followed in more subtle ways. In 2015, Schmeichel was criticised for endorsing Qatar's World Cup bid while remaining relatively silent on the country's human rights record. The criticism intensified as other former players began distancing themselves from similar partnerships. And like his son Casper, who became a Premier League winner with Leicester, Peter's commentary on modern players often bordered on the overly harsh. Fans sometimes accused him of nostalgia blindness, viewing the past as flawless and the present as flawed. Despite the noise, Schmeichel's place in United history remains untouched. For all the rival moves and off-field opinions, He was the wall that stood before glory, and without him, the treble may never have been sealed. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. There are goals, and then there's that goal. In the final moments of the 1999 Champions League final, as extra time loomed and Manchester United stared down defeat, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer stuck out a boot and changed history. A poacher's finish. A last gasp. A winner in the 93rd minute that turned him into a legend forever. It wasn't luck. It was Solskjaer's trademark, being in the right place at the right time. The baby-faced assassin was never the flashiest, but he was devastatingly efficient. A natural finisher, a team player, and a quiet professional. He rarely started, but he always delivered. After the treble, Solskjaer stayed loyal to United, even as injuries began to take their toll. A recurring knee problem nearly ended his career, but he fought back, only to retire in 2007. For many fans, he remained a symbol of humility and heart, but his story didn't end with retirement. In 2018, after Jose Mourinho's dramatic exit, Solskjaer returned, this time as caretaker manager. It was supposed to be temporary. It became much more. He won 10 of his first 11 games, beat PSG in Paris, restored belief, fans chanted his name. The club gave him the job permanently, but as often happens in football, fairy tales fade. Under Ole, United saw moments of promise, finishing second in the league, reaching a Europa League final, but never real consistency. Critics questioned his tactics, his man management, his in-game decisions, and when results dipped in 2021, the mood turned. Heavy losses, including a 5-0 humiliation at home to Liverpool, sealed his fate. He was sacked, tearfully, respectfully, but sacked nonetheless. Off the pitch, Solskjaer stayed clear of scandal. No tabloid meltdowns, no explosive interviews. But in the harsh world of elite football, even the nicest guy doesn't get a free pass. Today, he's back in the spotlight, leading Besiktas in Turkey after a 3-year break from club management. His legacy? Complicated. As a player, immortal. As a manager, a mix of nostalgia and naivety. But no matter what, when United fans see the words Solskjaer and 90+3, they still smile. Because for one night in Barcelona, he gave them everything. Gary Neville. Gary Neville was never the fastest, never the flashiest, and certainly never the most naturally gifted. But what he lacked in flair, he made up for in loyalty, intelligence, and a deep understanding of what it meant to play for Manchester United. In the treble-winning season, Neville was a relentless right-back, overlapping, tackling, organising. He was part of the famed Class of '92 and one of Sir Alex Ferguson's most trusted lieutenants. For Gary, playing for United wasn't just a job, it was a calling. After the treble, he remained a fixture in the squad for more than a decade, eventually becoming club captain. His leadership was respected. His tackles were fierce. His hatred of Liverpool, legendary. But Gary Neville's post-playing career may be even more memorable and more divisive. When he retired in 2011, many expected him to fade quietly into punditry. What they didn't expect was for him to become the voice of football on British TV. As a Sky Sports analyst, Neville was sharp, articulate, and brutally honest. He raised the standard for football commentary, but he also raised eyebrows. He criticised his former club, questioned their transfer strategy, called out owners and managers by name. Some praised the honesty, others called it disloyal. Then came his managerial experiment, Valencia 2015. It was short, disastrous, and painful. Appointed mid-season without speaking fluent Spanish, Neville's reign lasted just 4 months. 1 win in 9 league games, a 7-0 thrashing by Barcelona. He was sacked and never managed again. In 2024, he stirred controversy again, this time with Nottingham Forest. After calling the club's ownership gangster-like in response to VAR and managerial drama, Neville was officially banned from entering their stadium. Sky Sports issued an apology, but the incident showcased how his outspoken style could still provoke major backlash. Despite this, Neville's profile only grew. He became a businessman, co-owner of Salford City FC, and a vocal advocate on social issues. But his critics were just as loud, some accusing him of hypocrisy when his own businesses didn't match his public values. Still, through it all, Neville never backed down. He spoke his mind, stood by his views, and remained fiercely loyal to the badge, even when criticising those who wore it. Teddy Sheringham. Teddy Sheringham was the elder statesman in United's treble-winning side, sharp-minded, positionally brilliant, and ageing like fine wine. At 33, many thought his best years were behind him, but in 1999, he proved otherwise. His equaliser in the Champions League final was a turning point. One instinctive swing of the boot, and United were level. Moments later, he assisted Solskjaer for the winner. 2 touches, 2 goals. Just like that, Teddy etched his name into history, but Sheringham's United career was brief. He left in 2001, and many fans remember him as a short but critical chapter in the club's golden era. Post-United, he returned to Spurs, then played for Portsmouth and West Ham, still scoring goals into his 40s. He became the oldest outfield player to score in the Premier League at 40 years and 268 days. Off the pitch, Sheringham enjoyed the spotlight too, often linked with models, parties, and high-profile social circles. His relationship with model Danielle Lloyd made tabloid rounds, as did his reputation as a bit of a playboy. Nothing scandalous, just the kind of headlines that follow charm and longevity. Then came management. In 2015, he took over at Stevenage in League Two. It didn't go well. The team struggled and he was sacked less than a year later. In 2017, he managed Indian Super League side ATK. Again, results didn't follow. He lasted just 10 games. As a pundit, Sheringham has made occasional appearances, but never really settled into media like some of his former teammates. Instead, he's dabbled in poker, seriously, competing in international tournaments and even earning decent finishes on the professional circuit. Sheringham today is remembered less for controversy and more for timing. His timing on the pitch, and the perfect timing of a goal that helped win the greatest prize of all. Dwight York. In 1999, Dwight York played football like he was born for the big stage. Smiling, relaxed, and always one step ahead of the defence, he was United's top scorer during the treble season and formed a telepathic partnership with Andy Cole. Their link-up play was poetry in motion, quick, instinctive, and devastating. York was unstoppable that year. Goals in Europe, assists in the league, presence in every key moment. For many fans, he was the joyful face of a relentlessly efficient machine. But when the goals dried up, the headlines didn't. York's post-treble years were plagued by off-pitch distractions. His high-profile relationship with model Katie Price became a tabloid obsession, especially after the birth of their son, Harvey. Their public fallout, fueled by York's admitted absence as a father, sparked criticism and controversy. In interviews, York expressed regret, but by then, the damage to his public image had stuck. On the pitch, his career lost its spark. He moved to Blackburn, Birmingham City, and later to Australia, with Sydney FC, before a final stint at Sunderland. Decent spells, but nothing close to his 1999 form. In retirement, York hoped to step into management, but the opportunities never came. Despite earning coaching qualifications and expressing interest in multiple jobs, he remained sidelined. Some suggested his off-field reputation hurt his chances. Others pointed to a broader issue: how few black ex-players get top-tier opportunities. Then, in 2022, he finally got a shot, managing Macarthur FC in Australia. He won a domestic cup, but less than a year later, he was gone. Reports suggested disagreements over club ambition and infrastructure. Off the field, York has spoken openly about racial abuse he faced during his playing days, and how little has changed since. He's also continued to defend his legacy, arguing he was judged more harshly than others for living life in the spotlight. Today, Dwight York is remembered for that magical season, when he made football look effortless. But his story also reflects a tougher truth, that brilliance on the pitch doesn't always guarantee respect or redemption off it. Jaap Stam. Jaap Stam didn't just defend, he dominated. Towering, tactical, and ruthlessly efficient, Stam arrived at Manchester United in 1998 and immediately became the spine of their defence. He was fast, brutal in the tackle, and read the game like a grandmaster. In the treble season, he was unstoppable. 3 years, 3 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League, and a legacy carved in stone. Then, just like that, he was gone. Sold suddenly to Lazio in 2001, Stam's departure shocked fans and players alike. On the surface, it looked like business. Behind the scenes, it was anything but. The flashpoint was Stam's autobiography, Head to Head. In it, he revealed that United had approached him illegally before signing him from PSV. He also took jabs at some of his teammates and questioned the club's hierarchy. The book didn't sit well with Sir Alex Ferguson. Within weeks of its release, Stam was told he was being sold. According to legend, it happened at a petrol station. Ferguson called him in. They spoke. Apologies were made. But the decision was done. Stam was leaving. No warning, no farewell. Ferguson would later call selling Stam one of his biggest managerial regrets. But that wasn't the end of the controversy. Soon after joining Lazio, Stam tested positive for a banned substance, nandrolone, and received a short ban from football. He denied any wrongdoing, but the incident stained an otherwise disciplined image. Despite the drama, Stam kept playing at a high level, at Lazio, then AC Milan, where he reached another Champions League final. After retiring, he transitioned into coaching, managing clubs in England, the Netherlands, and the US. He never chased headlines. He let his past speak for itself. Stam's United exit remains one of the most abrupt and baffling decisions in the club's modern history. A player in his prime, a dominant presence, sold not for his performances, but for telling too much truth. Today, he's remembered not just for the tackles or the trophies, but for the reminder that even the strongest defenders can't guard against politics. Nikki Butt. Nikki Butt wasn't flashy. He wasn't the headline maker, but he was the glue. In 1999, Butt was part of Manchester United's heartbeat, a relentless, gritty midfielder who did the dirty work so Scholes and Keane could dominate. He ran, he tackled, he covered ground like few others. When Keane was suspended for the Champions League final, it was Butt who stepped in, and he delivered. His role in the treble may not have grabbed front pages, but inside the dressing room, his contribution was never underestimated. Post-treble, Butt stayed with United, but playing time dwindled. The emergence of more glamorous midfielders saw him slowly edged out. In 2004, he left for Newcastle United, seeking minutes and respect. It was a solid spell, no silverware, but a return to regular football. But his post-playing career is where things took intriguing turns. After retiring, Butt returned to United in a coaching role and eventually became head of youth development. Many praised him for shaping the next generation, but in 2021, he left the club abruptly. Rumours swirled, some claimed he was unhappy with how the club was being run behind the scenes. Others pointed to power struggles. Butt never aired the dirty laundry, but the exit felt cold. Then came something more serious. In 2019, he was arrested on suspicion of assault following an alleged domestic incident. No charges were filed, and the case was quietly dropped. But for a player who'd kept a low profile for most of his career, it was a jarring moment that briefly cast a shadow over his reputation. Since then, Butt has kept a relatively low profile, occasionally appearing as a pundit and staying involved in youth football initiatives. He's respected, but not often in the limelight. Today, Nikki Butt's name is tied to that golden generation, not as the loudest voice, but as one of the most essential. A player who gave everything, asked for little, and quietly shaped the legacy of Manchester United from both inside the pitch and out. Andy Cole. If Dwight York was the smile, Andy Cole was the sting. In 1999, the York-Cole partnership became folklore. It wasn't just about goals, it was about chemistry. Blind passes, one-touch finishes, movement that left defenders spinning. Cole scored 24 goals that season, including the vital semi-final winner against Juventus that sent United to the Champions League final. Calm, clinical, and criminally underrated, Cole did his talking with his boots. But respect didn't always follow. Throughout his career, Cole was often overlooked in favour of flashier strikers. He never quite shook off early critics who doubted his technical ability. Even during his peak, he felt underappreciated by both fans and the media. Behind the goals was a man constantly proving people wrong. After leaving United in 2001, Cole played for a string of clubs: Blackburn, Fulham, Manchester City, Portsmouth, Sunderland. Goals still came, but the magic of '99 never repeated. His career quietly tapered off, ending in 2008. Then came something no player trains for: In 2015, Cole was diagnosed with a rare kidney disease after a virus attacked his system. It left him weak, exhausted, and facing the very real prospect of organ failure. In 2017, he underwent a kidney transplant. His nephew was the donor. The recovery was brutal. Cole admitted to feeling depression, isolation, and a fear of being forgotten. But instead of disappearing, he spoke out about mental health, about racial inequality in football, about being overlooked again and again despite being the third highest goalscorer in Premier League history. And yes, there was controversy too. Cole was never shy about expressing resentment over his treatment by the media or his omission from punditry circles. He said outright that being black and quiet worked against him. He's also publicly feuded with teammates, most notably Teddy Sheringham. The two barely spoke for years, a feud sparked by what Cole described as Sheringham's cold shoulder during a substitution handshake in 1995. In later interviews, Cole came across not bitter, but wounded. He'd given football everything, and in his mind, it hadn't always given back. But his place in history is untouchable. 187 Premier League goals, 5 league titles, 1 treble. Andy Cole didn't ask for adoration. He asked to be remembered. And he will be. Dennis Irwin. You won't find Dennis Irwin on flashy highlight reels or in tabloid controversies. He wasn't loud, he wasn't polarising, he was just perfect. Irwin was Sir Alex Ferguson's most trusted soldier. Left back, right back, it didn't matter. He was two-footed, tactically flawless and ice-cold under pressure. In 1999, he played a vital role in the treble, as dependable as sunrise, penalties, free kicks, overlapping runs. Irwin did it all, and never asked for applause. Ferguson once said, if Dennis Irwin had been born Brazilian, he'd be called a genius. His teammates called him Mr. 7 out of 10. But in truth, he was more like an 8.5 every single week. Post-treble, Irwin kept going, well into his mid-30s. He left United in 2002 and joined Wolves, helping them win promotion to the Premier League. At 38, he was still outpacing wingers half his age. And then, without fuss, he retired. No farewell tour, no interviews, just a nod and a quiet exit. His post-football life followed the same rhythm. Calm, measured, respectful. Irwin took up punditry, mainly with MUTV and Irish broadcasters. No clickbait opinions, just thoughtful analysis. No drama, no scandals, no bad press. If there's one controversy tied to Irwin, it's that there's none. And maybe that's the point. In a team full of stars, characters and chaos, Dennis Irwin was the balance, the calm in the storm, a reminder that greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just shows up, game after game, and does the job better than anyone else. Yesper Blanfist. In 1999, Yesper Blanfist lived every footballer's dream. He started the Champions League final. On the biggest stage in the most important match, he was there, running the flank, holding the line, alongside Ryan Giggs. But what most people forget is, that was as good as it ever got. Blomqvist had arrived from Parma as a promising Swedish winger. Quick, technical, tactically sound. He was never the flashiest, but he fit Ferguson's system, hard-working, unselfish and ready to step up when needed. That final was meant to be a launchpad. Instead, it was his last big moment in football. Injury struck, and not just any injury, a devastating knee issue that kept him out for nearly 2 years. By the time he returned, United had moved on. Blomqvist moved to Everton, then Charlton, but his body was never the same. The flair was still there. The speed wasn't. Off the pitch, things got more complicated. After retiring in the mid-2000s, Yesper disappeared from the football radar and re-emerged in an unlikely place, Swedish reality TV. He appeared on Let's Dance and even opened a pizzeria. Some fans found it quirky. Others called it a sad end to a promising career. But there was more. Blomqvist also battled personal issues. In interviews, he's spoken openly about depression and the loss of identity after retiring. He missed the routine, the locker room, the adrenaline, and he struggled to figure out who he was without football. Eventually, he found peace, not in fame, but in simplicity. Coaching in Sweden, working with youth teams, staying involved in the game, but on his terms. Today, Blomqvist is remembered by United fans not just for that final appearance, but for being one of the few who stepped up when everything was on the line. His story isn't one of glory, it's one of survival. Ronny Johnson. If there was ever a player who defined the term unsung hero, it was Ronny Johnson. The Norwegian centre-back didn't have the swagger of Stam or the grit of Keane, but he had something just as valuable: trust. Ferguson trusted him, teammates relied on him, and in 1999, Johnson quietly anchored the defence during one of the most intense seasons in club history. He could play as a centre-back, as a holding midfielder, sometimes even as a full-back. Calm on the ball, smart in his positioning, Johnson was the utility knife every squad needs, but rarely celebrates. In the Champions League final, he played a crucial role, despite battling through injury. And yet, his work earlier in the season, especially in Europe, helped United get there. After the treble, injuries piled up. Chronic knee problems, repeated surgeries. He left United in 2002, joining Aston Villa. Then it was back to Norway with Vålerenga, and finally, a brief stint in Denmark before retirement. Off the field, Johnson remained, well, Ronny Johnson, private, polite. Almost invisible in the media. No scandals, no dramatic fallout, just the quiet life. But there was a moment. Years later, Johnson admitted feeling overlooked, not by teammates, but by fans and pundits. He felt like the role he played was undervalued. Not bitter, just honest. It was a rare glimpse into the mind of a player who gave his best and quietly walked away. Today, Ronny Johnson isn't remembered as a superstar. He's remembered as solid, trusted, the guy who made others shine. And that, sometimes, is the greatest role of all. Sir Alex Ferguson. No man shaped the treble more than Sir Alex Ferguson, the Scottish firebrand who turned a club into a dynasty, who stared down the biggest egos in football and bent them to his will. In 1999, he didn't just win football matches, he orchestrated chaos into perfection. His United side won the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League, all in one season, with late goals, with drama, with belief that never died. His half-time speeches were gospel. His stare was law. The players feared him and loved him. But what happened after the confetti? Ferguson didn't slow down. He built second and third great teams, signed Cristiano Ronaldo, clashed with Roy Keane, won more titles. Then, in 2013, he retired, a king walking away at the peak. But his post-retirement life hasn't been without pain. In 2018, Ferguson suffered a life-threatening brain hemorrhage. For days, he hovered between life and death. Fans held vigils. Former players reached out. He survived. And when he returned to Old Trafford months later, the applause was deafening. It was one of the few times Sir Alex looked emotional in public. Then there were the memoirs, the interviews, the documentaries, and the lingering feuds. He remained unapologetic. About selling Jaap Stam, about dropping Beckham, about choosing Moyes as his successor. Time softened his image, but never dulled his edge. Some say Ferguson was ruthless, that he ruled by fear, that he crushed players who stepped out of line. Others say he created a family, a culture, a machine that loved winning more than anything else. Maybe both are true. Sir Alex Ferguson's legacy doesn't just rest in trophies. It rests in the players he made, the ones he broke, and the standard he set. Manchester United have never been the same since. Because how do you replace a man who didn't just win games? He defined an era. The class of '99 didn't just win a treble, they became legends. Some rose higher, some fell harder. A few vanished into quiet obscurity, while others found their names lit in scandal. They became pundits, mentors, businessmen, survivors. The game moved on, but their story never faded. Because what they did wasn't just historic, it was impossible. In a season where fate twisted at the final whistle, they etched their names into football folklore. And no matter what came after, the triumphs, the trials, the controversies, nothing can erase what they built together. 20 years later, we still remember. Not just the goals, not just the trophies, but the men they were and the legends they became.